What's up? Welcome to it. It is the Sunday night edition. I'm Ace Michaels. I'm your host. We run this show every week. You have an opportunity to speak your mind and voice your opinions. We have a different panel every week of different people from all over the country, believe it or not. They want to be on the show and say, hey, this is what I think about that thing. Tonight, our topic is racism in America. Now, the reason we specified racism in America is because I personally believe that racism in America is unlike any other kind of racism in the world. And so we're particularly interested in our racism, not racism that we hear about the Britons going after the Scottish or the Irish. That's messed up, but that's how it is. If you've never seen the show before, we have no censorship on our show. People are encouraged to speak their minds, say it however they want to say it. So with that being said, let's get started. If you ever want to be on the show, follow the information links below, and let's have you a guest on the Sunday night edition. First off, we'll introduce our lady guest today. Is Carmel Alexis. Hi, Carmel. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
And tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
I'm a musician. I do compose music, and I'm happy to do so. I love it.
That's awesome. It puts a smile on your face, and that's a good thing. And our other guest tonight is a gentleman that I've known for a little bit. He's actually a good friend of mine. Welcome to the show, Maddison Hillton, for the first time.
Hey.
First time ever on my show. Dun-dun-dun.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, I'm excited to work with both of you tonight. Now, the way our show works is I ask a series of questions. You can answer however you feel. And again, we have no censorship whatsoever. Whoever starts, we just want to be respectful of the other person and not interrupt them while they're voicing their opinion, and then we go from there. If somebody says something you don't like, you can always say, hey, I have a rebuttal to that. I don't agree with that or something like that. But let's go on and get started with the show. The first question is about our famous Aunt Jemima. In the news, Aunt Jemima has been removed from the syrup container because some people say it's too racial to have a black stereotype. However, Mrs. Butterworth has not been removed, and she's also a brown lady. What are your thoughts?
You know, I okay. No, you go first. Please.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know too much about the syrup. I didn't know it was two of them. I thought it was just one, and I really don't understand why they're doing that. I think it's a matter of just confusing people and making people think things that aren't rational. And cause a lot of conflict. So I don't know.
Yeah, Maddison, you got a thought on that?
I didn't even know that was going on, but I think people are just grabbing it. You know, as far as the culture, and when I speak of the culture, I'm saying quote, black or African American, so-called, or whatever. We don't really know what to go after. So I think they're just reaching, man. They're just reaching for anything. You know, that's petty to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you on that. I think if you want to take the problem of drowning in the swimming pool, and the first thing you look at is, well, maybe the pool isn't draining properly. That's not what we're talking about. Like, we're talking about a whole nother level of thing here.
Yeah,
the syrup icon is the least of our problems, right?
The least of the problems. Yeah,
Here's a hot question that we get asked in every generation. What are your thoughts on interracial dating, couples, and families?
Ginger snap.
Okay. Well, I never really thought of it as anything other than two people that want to be together and love each other. I never
But have you ever been together and loved each other with a black man's or black's woman's?
Not a black man or a black woman, no.
What about any other ethnic race?
My children are Puerto Rican. My ex-husband's Puerto Rican.
So Puerto Rican, yeah, Puerto Rican black, yeah.
Oh my,
Yeah,
okay.
black, we claim everything brown is black.
Okay.
Yeah, he black. Okay, cool. So yeah. All right. What about you, Matt?
I mean, you know, I don't feel too much. You know, I'll go with like, you know, the ancient, you know, your nationality is determined by your father's father. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And whatever man that a woman choose to, you know, be with, then she's going to have his bloodline, right? And this is why the woman takes the man's last name and is grafted into his family and whatever. So, and then since we're on the topic of race, I mean, you know, the rule is one. There's something called a one drop rule, which you can Google it, which means if you have one drop of black blood, then you're black. So, you know, which is where the Southern Italians, the Sicilians, you know, that's where they catch shit. Because they have black origin, they have black blood from the Moors, Hannibal. So, you know, it's pretty definitive, you know, when you just get to the facts and you get to the science of it.
Speaking of the science, thank you. That was actually a brilliant answer. Speaking of the science, I want to throw this at you. This was actually borrowed from a conversation I had with Carmel the other day, which is this. Is this fantasy or freaking reality? How in the world did we get black people, who some of them are so black they look purple, all the way to the spectrum of white people, from supposedly two Caucasian people who made it in the Garden of Eden? Or no, they made it on Earth, but they met in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
How is that possible? Is it possible?
No. Just the spectrum. You know, black can create white, but white can't create black. Black is a combination of all colors. White is the lack thereof. That's a fable, man. You know, you got to go back to iconoclasm. You know what I mean? You have to go back to the whole whitewashing of history in order to clarify that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes facts, man. A person can't be emotional about this conversation. You have to research and do your own research in order to really understand and come to the reality of it all.
I agree. Ginger Snap?
Okay.
You got a rebuttal on that?
The Bible is an excellent source of information, but it isn't the only source that you should be reading. It also is very metaphoric, it's symbolic. I think when you take Adam and Eve as literal, it doesn't make any sense, because it also talks about their sin. I mean, why would God, who just created this being, Adam and Eve, put him into a garden where sin exists? Why would you do that to your creation and then see how they act? You're not going to do that. It doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of things about the Bible that we don't understand. And so it can't be two physical people. It's speaking of something else.
So to clarify on that, it is written that way. Adam was representing the men of a chosen bloodline, gene pool, and Eve represented the women of that. And when it said to let us go down and make man in our image, that was speaking of those powers giving the instructions, the order of the creator to a particular group of people. So in order to just simply put it in, description is a man and a woman. It's representing manhood and womanhood, but it's not just one person and one person. It's representing the men of that tribe and the women of that tribe. These were the first to be given the order. You know what I'm saying? The earth was populated, but this particular gene pool, he said, okay, you know, this is the group I choose to give the laws to.
So it's sort of like the chosen people theory is what you're saying?
That's
chosen people?
That's how the book reads. I mean, if you read the book, yeah.
Ginger Snap, you got any rebuttal on that? We go to the next question.
You know, it's good to think, to have these different views, because I've never heard anything like that before. So it's awesome to actually think about it like that. I don't, when I used to listen to the people of religion speak of it, I would always be like, how the hell?
Could one man, one woman do all that? Yeah.
I'm like, right? And that was so many things. So yeah.
Yeah.
One thing about church was I used to always, and I even got in trouble for this. I used to always wonder, like, what do you mean we're going to heaven? Like, how are we going to all go to heaven? Who's doing the maintenance in heaven? How are we going to find places to live and move our stuff around? Like, what's really going on? What do you mean, heaven? But anyway, that's a different show. Let's stay on race for a second, but we'll come back to heaven another show. But let's talk about, since we're on the topic of the olden days, First Testament type of thing, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You guys probably didn't know there was an elephant in the room, but the elephant in the room is Jesus. All right, so Jerusalem, Africa, Egypt, Israel. How is it possible that Jesus looks more like Carmel in a picture than Maddison? I think he should look more like Maddison if he comes from that area, that region. Your thoughts? Is Jesus black?
The lady.
Okay, well, actually, as far as Jesus's physical traits, I don't know how they came to him being looking like that. I guess
you do look like Jesus right now, by the way. Since I mentioned it, I'm just going to throw that back. like when we cut back to your screen, I was kind of having a moment. I was like, whoa. You look like Jesus Christos.
No!
Oh, man.
The typical Jewish person, I believe, probably looks like that.
Like
but when I think of Jesus, I don't think of a person. I think of a state of consciousness that's fully developed. That's why Jesus was able to do what Jesus did, because he understood everything. And also, not only that, he's depicted as a male. So it's only the male and not the female. So there's no equality there. So that's why.
Which, by the way, before we go to Maddison real quick, just, you know, we're on this whole thing about racism in America. Like, I'm talking about people in America. But there's a whole lot of sexism in America, too, that we have to deal with as well. That we haven't even started talking about the fact that women don't make as much as men. But that, again, that's a whole nother show. But after we're done with racism, it would seem like America would say then, we got to deal with sexism, too. But anyway. Maddison, your thoughts on Black Jesus?
Black Jesus, okay. Well, it gives a very clear description, you know, of what the Messiah looked like. You can find that in Revelations, you know. So it tells you about his hair, it tells you about his skin color. So there's that. There's two different characters. There's two different figures here that you're speaking of. One is the historical, the actual individual that existed, and the other is the iconoclastic, made up image that could be, he could be Fruity Pebbles.
Like Surfer from California? Like a surfer boy?
Huh?
Like a surfer boy from California?
He can be whatever, you know, because, I mean, Jesus was a Hebrew, you know, so, well, the Messiah was a Hebrew, so he would have looked like the Hebrews in that time. You know, he would have spoke Hebrew. His name would have been Hebrew, so it couldn't have been Jesus because the letter J didn't exist and still doesn't exist in the Hebrew alphabet. So this is going back to what the German scholars contributed to the story.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it gets deep.
The Germans. That's really all you had to say. You had me at the Germans. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh shit, here come the Germans. So
Germans.
anything else on that, Ginger Snaps?
No, that's really interesting information. I love it.
Okay, yeah. we silent Ginger Snap on that one. That's what
this topic requires one to be a scholar. It you know, you really have to go seek out the information, the facts. You know, I mean, if you look at the Hebrew Aleph Beit today, there's no letter J at all. So if you go back 2,000 years and you start screaming the name Jesus, people wouldn't even understand. They'd be like, what tongue is he speaking? What language is that? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, you know, you just have to research iconoclasm and you know, the whole institution of Christianity around 90 AD by Constantine. You'd have to get into all this and see what's really going on with that whole system, with that whole ism. You like that? That's a segue to the industry state of mind.
UK and Canada. Okay, so that way, you know, we covered ourselves. Yeah, I do like it. We don't want anybody stealing it, though. I looked after you that time. And let's go to the next question, which is separation makes us equal, and sometimes separation just makes us confused. Right now, there's a Buy Black movement in America. The Buy Black movement wants you to purchase only from Black-owned stores, Black-owned companies. There's even a group that's trying to get you to boycott places like Target. Don't ever go to Target. Instead, go to a Black-owned style Target. The question is that even feasible? Is that real? Could that work? Could Black people just go to Black-owned businesses?
I mean, why they could. I mean, you can convince a lot of people to do something that's absolutely absurd if you give them a really good reason and you're a really great talker and you know how their mind works. I think all of that is just, you're combating something that you're completely against with the same exact thing. You're mirroring it. So it's just, it's
That's a great point. That is a great point. I've never heard anybody say that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it was so good. Yeah, that's actually a great point.
You know, and then so people are at odds with each other and they're not coming together. And so you got to cut that shit out, man. You just got to all companies are so corrupt anyway. Target is corrupt. They're all corrupt. Really, if you wanted to make a difference, you'd either make your own stuff and make your own food and, you know, do it all yourself and then share among people equally, but that's just not how corporate America works.
There it is. And what we learned from that is you will never work for Target Marketing Group, that's for sure. And let's go to you, Maddison.
Not just Target. I'm not just pointing out Target.
You know, the Buy Black, that's coming from our community, realizing our dollar power in America. And you know, when the lady speaks of combating the same thing that you're up against, well, that's the only way to combat it. If you don't use equal or excessive force, then you can't combat anything. So, you know, what we're realizing, there's a, you know, when you speak of Black Wall Street, you go back in history and you find out about Black Wall Street and Rosewood and the communities that we had that were thriving. This is after, you know, slavery was abolished. And these communities were burned down. These communities were raided. These communities were taken over and stopped. Which led into Jim Crow, right? So when, and this is not taught in the public school system. So right now you have a lot of people, a whole nother generation getting woke up to this knowledge, right? So they're like, wow, we had our own shit, you know. I think every community should have its own. I think there's beauty in diversity. I think there's a sense of pride in knowing your ancestry and your heritage and your culture and your traditions and your customs that will make everybody a lot more respectable when dealing with other communities and nationalities, because you are a representative of yours. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This whole experiment of America, we are one nation all under God, it didn't work. It was a nice try. It was a good idea, but it doesn't work because for the simple fact, you know, people are different, man. You know, ideology and philosophically, you know, people can say, hey, you know, we're all the same, but no, we're not. No, we are not, you know. And you could take the lion out the jungle, but you can't take the jungle out the lion. People are different based on, you know, their bloodline, based on their ancestry, based on where they come from and just what makes them who they are. And these are going to conflict when crammed into a space that they can't retreat to their own separate corners and give it some air, give it some room to breathe. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's like me being Hebrew, me being a Jew. If someone were to invite me to their home and they made a pork dinner, I can't eat that. Someone told me about Lebanese people the other day. It was like, man, they're so beautiful. Even if they're poor and they don't have food, they will scrape their last food together to give you a meal as a guest in their home. Mm-hmm. So if someone, you know, spends all day preparing a meal for you, a feast for you, you come over and you can't eat it because of your heritage, your culture, your dietary law, that's going to create a conflict. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's going to be offended by that. The easy difference to recognize between people is, you know, what you look like. Oh, you black, you this, you that, your hair, whatever. You know, that's the easy thing to say. You know, this black said that he's too good for my food. Well, that's not what it was. It's a culture difference. You see what I'm saying? And so different nationalities have different cultures, and that's what collides. That's what disagrees.
Go ahead.
He spoke of the Civil War, right, and the ending of the slavery. So Lincoln, you know, he had that Emancipation Proclamation and all of that. So what happened was the Northern and the Southern were fighting. The Southern, the slaves were the engine for the Confederates. The Civil War was nothing but, it was for the ruling elite and the European aristocrats, okay, because they're greedy as fuck, okay? So what the North side did was they freed the slaves, not because they fucking cared, but because they wanted them to fight for them. And they knew that it would absolutely destroy the South because they ruined their economy. And so when you do that, you can fucking take control over. But what they did was they instilled violence. And so the same riots that they're doing down there is what's fucking happening now. If we're not very careful with this Black Lives Matter and all this other shit here, we're gonna have another civil war because people need to stop the violence. You're fighting, but what you're not doing is you're not hurting the ruling elite. You're hurting every single person on your economic level. The violence absolutely needs to fucking stop because the elite know that they're never going to get hit with the violence. It's always going to be the working class. It's always going to be us fighting each other.
Facts.
That is a great fact. Now we're about to run out of time. I've got time for one more question, and it's the most important question of our show, I feel. So you've got about a minute each to extrapolate on police brutality and racism. The question is police brutality and racism in America synonymous? Are they the same thing, basically?
Police brutality and racism, same thing. Okay. This would require one to go back. That star that they wear, trace that back, that symbol. You got to get into symbology, right? Trace that back to the origin of that symbol, and it's the slave patrol, it's the slave catchers. So yes, now where Europeans and everyone else now are afflicted by that was to create, in order to create the illusion that we were freed, some people had to get thrown into the pot with us, you know, and this is where amongst European and everyone else, they divided their own communities, and the lower level people got threw in with the blacks, and the elite went on to be elite. And then they focused the attention, the cameras, the media on everybody in the stew pot and said, that's freedom. So now you have what's used to be like peace officers. They're no longer peace officers. They're policy enforcers, which is policy enforcement. They make money for.
Let me take it to Karma because we got literally 2 minutes. So Karma, you got a minute, maybe a minute and a half.
Okay, so they're both violent. Yes, they're both wrong. They are the same. I think people like to use words and try to focus too much on the words, but they're both the same. But again, you can't group people. You can't group police officers into one group. Like, they don't have group mentality. They're individuals. You have to base the person's personality, and if they're good, if they're a psychopath, on the individual. That's why the whole defund the police, you're fucking defunding everybody, both good and bad. Don't do that shit. Stop fucking putting people in a group. They're individuals.
Hey, and that's what's up. Guys, we're out of time for this week's show, the Sunday night edition. This show is live now, or it's available on social media. You can comment and post. We can keep the conversation going in the feed, and you can always be on the show. I'm Ace Michaels. Thanks to my guests, Carmel Electris and Maddison Hillton. The Sunday night edition, baby. We'll see you next week.